Hey, second grade. We're going to start one of our last projects today. And the things that we're going to focus on are abstract art, which is art that doesn't look like anything that's real. And we're going to talk about pattern, anything that repeats, and texture, the way that something feels. So these are all actually things that we've done before, so this should be an easy and fun project. So I want to talk to you about a trip that I took kind of a few years ago now, but it was a really amazing trip. I went to New Mexico, and when I went to New Mexico, I did as much art stuff as I could. I visited the house of one of my favorite artists who's no longer alive, but I got to see like her living room and her kitchen. I got to see her bedroom. It was the coolest thing. But another really cool thing that I did was I went to a lot of Native American shops, galleries, museums, and I talked to a lot of Native American artists. And I learned so much about Native American pottery. And I love pottery. So I just wanted to share some of the things that I brought home with me from my trip to New Mexico. So this is the first thing. This is just a simple vase. It is very thin and it is very fragile. I'm always very nervous to hold this. But I want you to look carefully at it. It has some beautiful pattern. And the patterns are not realistic. They don't look like puppies or cats or pictures of landscapes or a picture of a person or a car. They're just shapes and colors put together in such a beautiful way. So I mostly see leaf shapes and triangles, and I see black and white. And I see some really nice straight and curved lines. And the way that the artist repeated the patterns all over is just incredible. Okay, so the pattern does not necessarily go across the artwork in a straight line. And the pattern is not just triangle, 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 triangle. But it's three triangles and then something totally different. And then three triangles and something totally different. And if you notice, they kind of go diagonal, right? So, and it goes around. So I think that this is a really cool way to think about how pattern can be different than what we've been learning about pattern in the last few years in school. Because you were pattern beginners, but now you're becoming pattern experts. You already know how to draw triangles and use colors or any other shapes or any other colors, but now you can combine those things to make really amazing patterns. So that's my first piece. This piece is my favorite. This is called a seed pod. And if you notice, at the very top, it has a little hole and it has a little plug. And the whole thing is hollow. And this is the only opening up here. And what the Native Americans would do is after they harvested all of their vegetables and fruits and their grains, they would take all the seeds and they would put them in these pods. And because New Mexico is a very, very hot climate, they would bury these in the cool earth until the next season when it was time to plant. So, and then they would smash them and they would take out the seeds. Isn't that amazing? But if you look really carefully, look at all the work that went into creating this seed pod. And look at the beautiful patterns, okay? So even this beautiful hummingbird is just filled with amazing patterns. So I see almost like fin shapes on the wing. I see triangles that are like inside of each other. I see repeated dots and lines. In the flowers and in the leaves, I see patterns of lines and dots. These are really simple things, but the way that the artist created them are very, very, very interesting. And then over here, it starts to get really abstract, right? It kind of looks like leaves, but not super realistic leaves, right? So this is another really cool example of pattern and a little bit of abstract art. This is a much better example of abstract art because this one has pictures of things that we recognize, like the bird and the flower. Okay, so then my next piece of pottery that I want to share with you is this piece. And this is called horsehair pottery. And I bought this, the first two I bought in a gallery. This one I bought just on the side of the road. And there was a very older artist that had tons of amazing pottery and weavings and like just fabrics that she had created, or maybe other people that lived near her created with her. I'm not actually sure, but she told me about this, the horsehair pottery. And horsehair pottery is made with horse hairs. So if I run my fingers on it, I bet you can see it has a lot of texture. So the textures are where either the horse hairs were laid and then burned away when they fired the clay, or they were drawn in with very thick, hard horse hair. So if you can see, the patterns are something that you can feel, which is called texture. So we're going to be creating patterns, we're going to be creating abstract art, and we're going to be using texture in order to create our artwork.
For this lesson, we are going to talk about abstract art and the principle of pattern. Abstract art, you may remember from kindergarten and first grade art, is artwork that does not look like anything real. If we look at these two artworks, we can't recognize a person or a place or objects. We basically see lines, shapes, colors, various elements of art in the artwork, but they don't combine to make anything that looks real. The artwork on the left is by artist Pete Mondrian, and the artwork on the right is by Vasily Kandinsky, and both of these artists are known for their abstract artworks. Which of these paintings is realistic? On the left side, we have a beautiful realistic bunny rabbit by Albrecht Dürer, which, by the way, was also created by using a single hair. He painted each of the hairs with one hair that he pulled out of his paintbrush, which reminds me so much of the horsehair pottery that we talked about in the beginning of the video. And the painting on the right is by artist Bridget Riley. So which one is realistic and which one of these do you think is abstract? Remember, realistic looks like something that is real. Abstract does not look like anything that is real. So the bunny is realistic, and Bridget Riley's, it looks like diamonds. They are abstract. So let's just address pattern really quickly. We know that pattern is when you repeat something and over again. And if we look at these three examples, we see shapes that are repeated, but also colors that are repeated. So we see an AB, AB, AB pattern at the top, ABB, ABB pattern in the middle, and an AAB, AAB pattern at the bottom. So these are just examples of different ways we can repeat something. On the top, you can repeat two things over and over again. In the middle, you can repeat one thing and then two, one, then two. And at the bottom, you can do two, then one. There are so many different ways that we can make a pattern. But it's important to remember that pattern is anything that repeats. So in art, we often repeat three different kinds of elements or more, but this is an example of colors that are repeated, shapes that are repeated, and lines that are repeated. Basically, anything that repeats is a pattern. We're going to be making a pinch pot using clay. Hopefully by now you've gotten the clay that I sent home or left at Cozy Lake for you to pick up if you're a virtual student. And you can make a pinch pot, or if you need to, you can make a plate using the clay that I sent you. And you can also create a pattern using texture by pushing objects or your fingers into the clay, and you can paint your clay into a pattern. But we are going to be making some sort of a bowl or a plate with a clear pattern. So let's get started. Okay, second graders, what we're going to do is you're going to warm up your clay by squeezing it in your hands a lot. Then roll it. You can either roll it between your hands or on the table or surface that you're working on until it becomes a ball. Okay, it does not have to be a perfect ball, but just a round. And I'm going to show you 3 different things that we can do to make this. First is a pinch pot. So you're going to hold the clay in your hands, very safe and secure with your fingers wrapped around. And you're going to hold it in the hand that you do not write with, which is called your non-dominant hand. And then you're going to take the thumb of the hand that you do write with, your dominant hand, and turn the clay to the side and just stick your thumb inside of it. And when we pinch, we're not going to pinch like this because that'll just make your edges really thin. We're going to stick our thumb in the hole deep and then push our thumb towards these fingers. So I'm going to go in and towards those fingers. And then I'm going to turn my clay and I'm going to go in and towards my other hand's fingers. So notice these fingers are just kind of for show. I'm not really pinching them because I want to keep making my hole inside bigger with every one of my pinches. And I'm not pinching a lot. I'm just kind of pinching slightly and then turning it. And then I'm using this hand for support. Okay? It might be something that you need to try a couple times before you get the hang of it. So if you feel like it's not really working out the way you want it to, look how nice and deep my hole is getting. Then you can just roll it back up into a ball and then rewind the video and start over. But I do really caution you against pinching like this because it will just make your top thin and it'll leave your bottom of your pinch pot really thick. Then I'm going to take it and I'm going to kind of push it against the table because I want the bottom of my pinch pot to be pretty flat. And what's great about Model Magic is it doesn't leave a lot of mess, but it does get a little bit sticky. So you do not want to push it against the table and then leave it to dry. You want to pick it up a couple times just to make sure it doesn't stick permanently to the table, okay? And then I'm using both of my hands now to kind of just like shape the pot so that it looks a little bit smoother and really well shaped. But you want to always support the outside of your pot when you're pushing from the inside, and you want to support the inside of your pot when you're pushing the outside, or else it's going to collapse. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. I might continue working with this as I continue through this video. If this is something that's really challenging for you, I'm going to show you 2 other things that we can do. So you can start again with that ball, and then you can just smash it into a pancake and flip it and push it again and flip it and push it again. So what you could do is you could make a plate. So I have my pancake, and then I could kind of pinch up the sides and make it into like a plate. I could keep pushing inside. Okay, so that's something else you could do. Although I would like you to really try the pinch pot method, which was the first thing I showed you. Okay, and then the other thing that you could do is you could take your clay and you can make it into a real thin pancake. Now, if you want to use a rolling pin, I don't know, at my house we have a lot of Play-Doh rolling pins. If you use like a baking rolling pin, make sure you have permission first. I'm just pushing it with my hands, but notice I keep picking it up and flipping it so that it doesn't get stuck to the table. So once you get it pretty nice and thin, you can take a bowl or a plate that you have from home. Again, get permission, and you can press it into the shape of it and then kind of move it around. Sorry, I'm not getting it where I want it to be. And then you can kind of move it around too, but make sure you have permission. And then you would let it dry in this shape so that when it dries, it would be like a bowl, and it should once it's dry, unless you press it into it, and you don't really want to press it into it, but once it's dry, hopefully it'll be hard and like a bowl shape, okay? And you could also use tools like you can use kitchen tools, or if you have Play-Doh tools, to kind of trim the top of it just to make it look a little straighter. I'm using a paintbrush because that's what I have on hand. But again, if you have any Play-Doh tools, those would be great to get out for this project. If you don't, obviously we can improvise, and forks and things like that will work. So you're going to have some sort of a plate or a bowl using one of the 3 methods that I just showed you. And you are going to be graded on the way you formed the bowl. So just make sure that you're just trying to get it to look like a bowl or a plate, okay? I think I'm going to end up doing a plate here. And then the last thing that we want to do is we want to add our patterns. Now you can do patterns with texture, or you can do patterns with color. If you use color, you can, I really love to use watercolors with this kind of clay because I think that they work really great. But you can also use permanent marker. Any kind of a washable marker is going to rub off on your hand and smear really badly. So I would advise against permanent marker. Washable marker. If you do choose to use marker, which is completely fine, I suggest that you wait until it's dry, until like overnight. Let it dry overnight, because otherwise you're going to be digging into it. So part of this assignment is the clay, and part of it is my clay is a little bit dried out, so it's not really moving the way I want it to be. So hopefully you have better success than I do. Anyway, part of it is the patterns. So you can use any kind of tools to make your patterns. I'm going to use a marker cap, and I'm just going to repeat one shape all around. And maybe on this, I can use that paintbrush again, and I can repeat a texture all the way around. You can use your fingers if you want to. You can use a fork, would make a really cool texture. Make sure you have permission before you use your mom and dad's silverware on your art projects though, and make sure you wash things and don't just put them back into the drawer. So I just did a little bit of a pinch all the way around with my thumb because this is a pinch pot. And then after you add a little bit of texture, which is pretty much your choice. Maybe I'll try to see what I can, ooh, that's kind of a cool U that I'm making there all the way around. Then you're going to add color pattern. Remember, a pattern is, you can use any element, so I'm using texture and I'm using shape. And then maybe I'll put red and keep painting until, or coloring until you have a nice pattern. So just paint until you feel like you have a good amount of patterns, definitely more than one. It can be multiple colors, it can be more than one color, it could be inside the vessel or just outside the vessel. It is up to you. Take a picture and upload it to the classroom or email to me, and I cannot wait to see what you guys can make. Remember to have fun and reach out to me if you need any supplies.